Hello everyone, it's Sara Black Spiker. Welcome to day 5 of activation series. How are we doing? How are we feeling? How is everything going? I'd love to hear your feedback, and I want to honor you for those of you who are still with me. Usually the first day is full of excitement and everybody signs up and everybody shows in, and day 2, day 3, day 4, people start dropping off. Day 5, now this is a real commitment and we still have 2 days to go. So again, kudos to you if you're still here. I want to honor your commitment, I want to honor your dedication, and I want to honor your journey. So celebrating you big time. If you're watching a replay, same goes to you. Sometimes I think it takes even more discipline to set aside time to go back and listen to recording as opposed to showing up live, because this is really one of those things, what do you do when no one's watching? Oftentimes it's easy to show up and you have a community around you and people see you, and it's almost like a sense of accountability. But when you show up when no one's watching and you still do the work, that is a whole different level of dedication right there. So immersion and identity activation, reinvention and innovation. We were talking about the expression. We were talking about legacy blueprinting. Yesterday was a doozy for me. It was a long day. It was a busy day. It was a full day. And ironically, talking about voice alchemy today, after yesterday's fiasco, for those who might not be familiar, it took 3 takes for me to really be able to tune in and align and really settle into my own power and into my own voice to lead the masterclass yesterday. Take 1, I was frazzled for external reasons. Take 2 was full of internal stuff going on that just didn't allow me to be as fluent and as grounded as I wanted to be. So, interestingly, what happened after all the perfect makeup, the perfect lighting, the perfect camera angle went away, I was like, screw it, let's just do it again. And it went smoothly, and it was such a big difference that I decided to use the 3rd recording then to go out live. But it's just a testament of, and kind of like a segue into today's topic of voice alchemy, because in a way, it's not about being perfect. It's not about sticking to the script. It's not about saying all the right things if you don't feel them, if you feel disconnected from them. And it's also not about being louder. Just this morning, I was also recording an episode of my Make Your Life Your Legacy podcast, and I was touching upon the experience that as I was getting ready to launch this masterclass series, another person in one of my circles was launching and celebrating their event, and celebrated the fact that like 6,000 people or so showed up, and they created multi-million-dollar month out of that, and it was freaking amazing. I mean, I was so excited for that person. I was celebrating them, truly honoring them, and not just realizing, I knew that for a long time, but also totally owning the fact that this is just not something that excites me. That kind of mass audience in this stage of my life. What excites me is intimate gathering, when I know you personally, when I know your name, when we have this deep connection, deep trust, and it's a whole different space, sacredness of space that we co-create. This is my jam. That's where the best of my work shows up. So in the context of voice alchemy, I also want to offer to those of you who might be teetering between the 2 extremes on the spectrum, like where do you fall? I want to offer, and if you need that permission, it's not about being louder, but it's about being truer to who you are, even if it's seasonal. Because at the end of the day, we are all changing. Who we were 10 years ago is different than who we were 5 years ago. Chances are it's a lot different than what we are today and where we're heading. And having this fluidity, it's crucial. And giving yourself that permission is the key to each next level. And speaking of that permission, the tricky thing is that you are in this space, you have built success, you know what it takes. So it's not that you lack words. You don't lack the tactical and strategic equipment to say the right thing, or to write the right thing, or to show up in the right way. As you're going through transition, you might be noticing that whatever that is that you're expressing, putting out there, just might not feel like you anymore. And that's the disconnect. And that's where you're trying to build that bridge and close that gap, right? So perhaps it's balancing being super strategic and also super mystical. This is somebody like me. And for a long time, I know I was swinging like a pendulum from one extreme to another, and I couldn't figure out the balance. I didn't know how to own both sides of me. And also, you know, when you speak, and it doesn't have to be rah-rah, super loud and riling everybody up. It can be speaking softly, but still having that power in every single word that can be felt, and that activates people in a way that only you can do. So sometimes leaders absolutely need that permission, and only you are the one who can write yourself that permission slip ultimately, and you work on the fact that you can finally embody that quiet power. And as I was saying earlier, you know, it's writing, it's creating, it's expressing yourself as if nobody is watching. Because at the end of the day, we are our own key audience, aren't we? And using that voice, that allowing that voice of us to lead, that's the voice alchemy that we want to talk about today. So I want you to understand that voice isn't your niche. It's your signature, right? And it's your signature, and it's you're being recognized how you show up, how you write, how you speak, how you lead, how you do everything internally and externally. So the key of today's session is to give you the tools, to give you the frameworks, to inspire you, to empower you, to motivate you, to be able to merge, to combine the both. That's where the magic happens, when you're, I want to say, when your words and visuals and your presence, your inner knowing meets your outside expression. That's where the magic happens. So there are a couple of ways we're going to be going about that, as usually. There's going to be some personal examples that I'm sharing, or some case studies from the clients. There's going to be actionable items on your end. There's also journaling prompts in the workbook. If you don't have it yet, around this video, there's still a link available where you can download yours. And I'm also gonna offer some mindset shifts that you can contemplate on and be with and really work on as you're navigating towards that next chapter of your life. So why don't we start with some of the examples. As I was saying, oftentimes we are trained. Let me tell you a different story. This one comes up right now. So I was born and raised in Slovenia, and in Slovenian educational system, it's very much, from what I understand and what I still notice and witness these days, it values memorization, it values logical thinking, it values theory. And what's expected of kids is to memorize incredible amount of data from the earliest years on. When I see what third graders, fifth graders, seventh graders have to know, not even getting started on high school, I am at loss of words many times. Yes, there are things that I personally believe are absolutely important, and there's a ton of things that I absolutely believe it's completely outdated, irrelevant, and it needs some serious overhauling. By the time you get to high school, a lot of high schools take pride in really tearing you down, even if you were a straight A student throughout first to ninth grade. By the time you get through high school, some will openly tell you, we're here to tear you down the first year and then build you up. But the way they do that is very narrow-minded, in my opinion, and it really takes away self-confidence. It really squeezes kids in boxes, confining them into molds where they're not appreciated for questioning things, we're not appreciated for wanting to innovate, to want to do something different. So by the time you're down through those 4 years in high school, what oftentimes happens is that you're an amazing follower. You learn how to follow instructions to the T, but the practical application, your confidence, your awareness of what is that makes you you, that is usually fragmented, and this just disappears in many cases. So that was also my scenario. I was completely lost in high school. I was straight A student in elementary school. By the time I got to high school, I was barely making it through. And if it wasn't for basketball, I don't think I would make it, because basketball was the balancing act when I still had some self-esteem and self-worth to hold on to, because the grade-wise in school, it was a complete mess. And by the time I got to college, my first year in college, it was very similar to a lot of memorization and very little practical application, and almost no correlation to everyday life and what were current events. Sometimes I joke, if I stayed in college back then, I'd probably still be freshman today. However, by the time I got to the States, at university, I was shocked, to be honest, that my first years in college, the classes they had to take, some of them were identical to the classes I already had in high school. Now, that was benefit to me because I didn't have to learn the subject. I mastered the subject already, but I could use those classes to learn the language. But just to think of how on what different levels the two educational systems were. However, by the time kids get out of college in the States, oftentimes they are equipped with the practical application. That said, there is definitely something of value to have a broader knowledge, a broader understanding of many different things. You know how they correlate, you know how things work and cause and effect and so on and so forth, because we are in a fluid environment, global environment. It's almost like a butterfly effect, domino effect. One thing leads to another. So having that understanding is gold. On the other hand, sometimes there's incredible value in being niched down and having the expertise in that one area beyond what anything else or anybody else out there. So I've had the honor and privilege actually to educate myself, to be educated in both systems and being able to combine the best of both worlds. But what I found interesting upon my return, and I was talking to a couple of other Slovenians who also got educated abroad and then returned, what we noticed, like, oh my gosh, it took us years to find our voice. It took us years to get out of this box and to overcome our fears and overcome our self-doubt. We tended to lock ourselves out of opportunities because we were told for so long that we were just not good at something. When we got mentors overseas who encouraged us, like, for example, in my case, that was a business school. In Slovenia, I was convinced that I sucked in math, I sucked in statistics, I sucked in economics, that business was not for me. By the time I got to the States, I was coached and I was mentored differently, and I was able to tap into that power that came through business school. And it had nothing to do with statistics, it had nothing to do with the economics, it had nothing to do with math, but there's so much more to business than those three areas, right? But I had to work on my belief system, I had to work on ultimately on my story and on my own narrative and on my own voice to be able to then command space and take up my space in classes and raise my voice and participate in conversations, bring my outside perspective and different opinions and so on and so forth, and really add value through that aspect. And that's what I think oftentimes when we lead life, you know, after we're done with school, we're still very much in this, I want to say, in this wheelhouse of I have to follow certain steps. There are certain expectations, there are certain milestones that are associated with my age, with my gender, with my, you know, the focus of my studies and so on and so forth. And oftentimes it doesn't happen until 30s, 40s, sometimes 50s, and sometimes never even happens that you take a pause and like, wait a minute, whose life am I leaving? Whose expectations am I fulfilling? Whose voice am I adapting and trying to speak while shutting out and shutting down my own knowing and my own brilliance, my own expertise, my own experience, and so on and so forth. So today, like I said, I would love to encourage you to stop hiding behind credentials. We all know that what led you to where you are is real, it's incredibly valuable, it's powerful, and you should definitely own it. And it's time to stop hiding behind it, stop using it as a safety blanket and become real. In my case, one of the scariest things that I have done in that regard was after my trips to the ER due to burnout. And I decided to be really honest and open about my own personal recovery. And it was also postpartum depression, and it was also an incredible sense of isolation, and just disconnect from myself and from, you know, there was so much that was going on. And ironically, looking back, you know, like I just wanted to be there and I wanted to offer what I needed in those moments. And in those moments when I was going through those fires, it felt like I was completely alone. I felt like there was no one there. It's not entirely true though. But what happens is when we go through those fires, it feels like we're all alone, because certain journeys, there's no other way. We gotta bear it and battle them on our own, you know. On the other hand, sometimes we're just not open, able, available to hear what others before us had to say and what they were sharing. It's not like somebody can just come in and shakes you by the shoulders and shows you the road and you're like, oh yeah, great, I got it. You have to learn the lesson on your own. That said, I still made it a mission to be the lighthouse, not the tugboat. It's a huge difference. But to be the lighthouse to those who were open and who were seeking and who were available and who were curious and who were determined to, hey, maybe there are lessons that I have to learn and I can learn and I can be guided and I can be mentored, so I don't have to reinvent the wheel and go through, and maybe I can create my own shortcut in some way or another. Maybe I can make it a little bit easier for me. Maybe I can skip a couple of things, because that is possible as well. So the funny thing happened, there were moments when I was sharing things and people would say to me, oh my gosh, you're so honest, you're so brave, I admire you and I can relate so much, thank you. Like, yeah, I didn't even think about it would be oversharing in certain ways. However, there was a difference between being perceived as a peer when somebody's like, oh my gosh, this is so amazing, and then they go and hire somebody else who is perceived as the authority. Now we're talking, right? What is the difference? How can owning your voice and sharing your own story and the core of what you stand for and who you are and who you're becoming, what do you do, what is authority, what does that even mean? There is this very superficial level that I believe, when again it has a ton of check boxes that you're supposed to meet the criteria of what makes you an authority. And in my time, that was publishing a book, and that was being published and featured in media, and that was really running master classes and seminars and webinars and launching events and so on and so forth. I've done it all, actually, and I still didn't feel to be kind of like an authority, because that in itself, like, I can't show up and say, oh, I'm the authority. Authority is the perception others have of you. And again, it came down to my choice. Am I going to be the loudest? Am I going to tick off all the boxes? Or am I going to do what felt right to me, for me at a time, and in relation to who was I there to serve? Another layer in this conversation for many of us here is that we're also oftentimes as trailblazers, we are ahead of the curve. And oftentimes it happens that we start, we're like the front wave. So when we share things, when we come up with things, when we launch certain things, create certain approaches and so on and so forth, we are still the ones who are educating people on what that even is and how does that even relate to them. And then the mass adopters after us, and that happened to me many times. And first it really triggered the heck out of me when I would turn around and I'd see an influencer saying exactly what I was just saying like a few months ago, and I heard crickets and they're raking in millions. It's like, the heck, what did I have that I don't? It was that positioning. And it was the timing. But through the inner work, and this is something that I work with my clients as well, it's like, well, you can't control that. And when you're ahead of time, you have a choice to make. Are you going to own it? And are you going to blaze a trail and be that lighthouse regardless? And you know that this is the highest level of service, that this is what you're here for? Or will you stifle your voice, you will minimize yourself, you will compartmentalize yourself, and you will distill yourself for the masses? It might be tempting, but I almost guarantee that it's not going to work for somebody like you and I. Because at the end of the day, it's going to feel like you just chopped your legs at your knees. You're going to start feeling contorted, you're going to start feeling confined, you're going to start feeling restless, you're going to start feeling doubtful and even more disconnected, and then the whole Pandora box opens up from that. And the recovery, it's even more complicated, more complex, longer, frustrated, painful sometimes. So I would highly recommend that you choose wisely when you come to that fork of the road, and honor your role. Why are you here? And if you're a trailblazer, there's not many of us here, and if you are one of us, we need you. The world needs you just the way you are. And if that means creating a mantra of some sort to get you through those days that are filled with self-doubt and they're filled with self-judgment, then this is what you need to do. But don't minimize yourself for the approval of others. Shine brighter. There's a meme somewhere out there, I remember, it's like when somebody says that I'm shining too bright, instead of dimming my light, I ask them to just, look away or put on sunglasses, because I'm not going anywhere. Something along those lines. I love that attitude. So yeah, that covers the stop hiding behind the credentials and actually start sharing real stories, right? Second thing is that we were talking about the rhythm yesterday when we were when we ask you to redefine, reimagine, recreate your energetic flow. So when you find that rhythm of yours, that includes your voice, and that includes giving yourself permission to sound like all of you, be all of you. There was another amazingly powerful and liberating feedback that I received from one of my not clients, actually, my mentors. A while ago, I still had a toddler and a newborn at home, and I was telling them how, and this was actually a man, so the energy with which he offered it to me was very different and had a different resonance than coming from a woman. What he said to me was like, yeah, of course, you are so many different things to so many different people. It doesn't mean that you have to shut one down in order to only cater to one. He said, imagine you are calling your little ones to dinner and you spoke to your newborn differently than when you are talking to your toddler. And at night, in the evening, you probably communicate with your husband a lot differently than with the clients. And it's all of you within 24 hours. And I was like, yeah, he's right. Absolutely. So it's this multidimensionality that we talked about a couple of days ago, and it's holding multiple timelines that we spoke about. It's all in there, and all of those things are being offered to you and are asking of you to be mindful of and to integrate them, to own them, and really give yourself permission to be all of those things, because it doesn't mean you're going to lose clarity when you do that. It just means that you become undeniable. And when I talk about undeniability, I've done a whole series of that in masterclasses in the past too, which you can find through my website and through social media. Being undeniable, in my view, it has a couple of layers. The first layer is that you are undeniable to those around you. You know, you walk into a space and you command the presence. They cannot deny your presence. Secondly, you become undeniable to you. You know yourself, you accept yourself, you own that power, and you are proud of it, even on the days when everything falls sideways and you just want to curl up in a bed and cry, and you own that too, because it is a human experience of you. And then the next layer is becoming undeniable to your desires. So whatever it is that you're out there and you are calling in and you're aspiring to create, you're aspiring to achieve, you're visualizing, you're in some cases even chasing, if I may say so, now you're going to be attracting, because you're going to become the energetic match for that desire of yours. So yes, becoming undeniable is a beautiful outcome of owning that voice. Now, mindset shifts that come with that, there's a couple. As I said earlier, it's not just about being louder, but becoming truer. And also, it's not always about saying more, but saying what matters and what matters to you, and you can feel it. And I'm gonna again give a perfect example. Just yesterday, I had all the right things on a paper, but it felt like there was a lot of things, and I was saying things that were just convoluted, and the first recording was like almost an hour. By the time I composed myself and got back into my power and grounded energy, everything was said in 30 some minutes, and it mattered, and it had a different energy. It touched people differently. I felt differently when I was speaking and transmitting that. So yeah, what matters to you, and what matters to those you are intended to talk to. And I think social media and modern media in general, it can be a slippery slope really quickly, because it is very tempting, and thin line separates vain metrics and superficial metrics, including, you know, the amount of followers and likes and comments and all the different types of engagements that we're all chasing, versus who are the ideal buyers, who actually listens and who actually buys. It's my experience and experience of so many people in my circles that the best buyers are never, ever engaging on posts on social media. They watch leaning back and literally come from shadows out of nowhere when they're ready. They raise their hand, they're like, yeah, I'm ready and I'm going all in. Not dabbling in some, you know, let's just do the trial run of some small thing and see how it goes. No, they know what they want, they know what they need, and they want what they desire, they know what they require. And I say, yes, here, right? And it's the easiest, and it's the most beautiful and most powerful and empowering collaboration, partnership. This is, at least this is how I operate. You know, I'm not necessarily here for somebody who's looking for quick fixes and viral hacks and external validation and so on and so forth. We become partners. I'm going to talk about this in greater detail in just a little bit. So this is kind of like a side note. But coming back to sharing what matters. Another thing that is a common theme with people like you and I is that we cannot be distilled down to 150 characters. There's no freaking way that we can be distilled down to 150 characters, no matter how hard we try. Whatever you write down in 2 minutes, it feels like it's yesterday's news and it feels like it's just incomplete. The same goes to trying to explain what is that you do. For me, example, my main professional identities, so to speak, are mentor, speaker, and writer. Seemingly completely different buckets, silos. They do integrate, one goes with the other very fluidly, and they support one another, absolutely. But if I was trying to explain each and every one to every type of buyers that I'm attracting, oh my gosh, I don't think we have 5 days to go through. And I think that can be frustrating as well when you're trying to communicate and you're trying to convey the message and you're trying to present yourself, especially during networking events, right? When you have the so-called elevator speech. I don't even have one anymore because it was just a waste. What I started to allow myself to do many years, sorry, I'm having hiccups. What I started to do many years ago is give myself permission to show up at networking events and stop chasing the amount of business cards that I exchanged and coffee meetings that I set up and elevator pitches that I gave, but tuning into the energy of the space and leaning into the magnetism of the person that I was meant to meet. And sometimes it was just single one person that then ultimately led into becoming one of the greatest clients or one of the greatest referral sources or some other meaningful connection for a meaningful reason that couldn't even be imagined at the point when we first met. I know this is not how everybody approaches it, but it's what's been working for me for all these years, and for clients who are gravitating towards me, it's the same thing. Most of us are also rather on the introverted spectrum, so energy is really important to us. And yeah, it takes a lot of, I want to say, self-discipline and trust to get to the point when you can tune out all the noises and tactics and strategies for networking mastery, so to speak, and do things your own way, knowing that it's exactly the way that it's meant to be, and that will lead to outcomes that are desired and exceed the expectations. Another thing that falls under that same umbrella is the danger, not just chasing the vain and superlative metrics, superficial metrics, but also losing ourselves when we try to shrink down and water down and dilute ourselves just so that we can be accepted by others. Again, as trailblazers, as powerful individuals whose presence can be felt, more likely than not, we're going to be intimidating to others. However, we are not intimidating, they are intimidated. A huge difference. And we're just not a match for everybody, and that is okay. It simply means that when you feel like you don't belong to a space, when it feels like you are expected to tone down, just go find a different space or create one. You know, it's not a rocket science, and it's very, very, very empowering to do so. Again, it takes a little practice, but once you do it, you're not going to be looking back. All right, next one. This is a funny one because, again, we are so conditioned to filling the gaps when speaking, filling the gaps when having conversations, filling the gaps when any moment of quietness arises. Even just think about it when you're watching TV and all of a sudden things go quiet. What do? You start paying attention. Like, oh my gosh, even though you were watching TV and you were answering your emails on a computer on your lap and you still had a phone next to you doing, scrolling through social media, somehow our generation, the generations now these days, this is how we roll. We do at least 3 things at the same time. But when everything goes silent on TV, you're like, oh shit, what's going on? And you start paying attention, and some very smart brands, they start to use the tactics, and that commercial is actually designed without any noise, without any sound, just so that you can go and like, oh wait, and now you're paying attention to it. So silence, it feels scary and it feels foreign, and instinctively we feel like we need to feel it in. But silence actually can be just as magnetic, if not more so, than the speech itself when it's intentional, right? So what I would like to offer to you when it comes to this third mindset shift is to be more intentional in the way you speak. I will be the first one to admit that I'm still practicing that part. Speaking comes easy to me. There's always room for improvement. Oftentimes I find myself, depending also on a day, and I was talking about it yesterday when we spoke about the energetic flow and dynamics of daily energy from week to week to week. There are days when it feels like I can speak fluently, I can use sophisticated language, and there are days when I can't put a sentence together no matter how hard I try. And there are days when I can speak without any fillers, and there are days when every other word is and I think that is just being a human, right? But the funny thing is, somebody once offered to me, it's like, oh, just practice and rehearse and rehearse and rehearse and rehearse. It doesn't work for me, because then I am not tuned in the energetics of the space, but I'm more concerned with the rehearsed presentation. I'm trying to make sure that I can remember the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. So even my own energy falls flat. And that can be felt by the audience. It might be, again, just like I tried yesterday, every word on that script, framework, outline was perfect. It didn't come through because I couldn't connect with it. Because there was a disconnect between the energy that I was receiving and what I wanted to present and what was on the paper, and it was just a mess. So when you tune into the purpose and you allow for the dynamic of spoken word, written word, and space and quietness, you're gonna be just fine, okay? So let's just leave it at that. When it comes to questions that are waiting for you in a workbook, you're gonna find the prompts today that are really tickling your soul. Because there's oftentimes a difference between what we're saying in public and what we're actually really feeling. And that can be very evident for those of us who are very sensitive and in tune with what's going on around us. The current state of affairs, I think, is a prime example of that frequent disconnect between how we're presenting ourselves, what are we saying in public, and what do we stand for, and what we believe, and what we know in our soul. And more often than not, majority of people still choose to hold back and tone things down just to be widely accepted and not to be sanctioned or in fear of retribution. This is how those regimes work, and silencing is a tactic that through the history we have all learned what the consequences are. But whether or not you're in politics, this is absolutely not politics. This is speaking simply at the level of leadership in general, leading ourselves first and foremost, and then leading those around us. There's a big difference and incredible power when we choose to be brave, when we choose to be honest, when we choose to be courageous, when we choose to be intentional, when we choose to be meaningful, and when we choose to step into our power and use that power in how we are presenting and what we're saying, honoring those whispers of our soul, honoring the knowing of our hearts, and honoring our experiences and expertise and what we see and not exactly what we're told. Again, those can be very different things sometimes. So I just wanted to touch upon that one because there's other things that are waiting for you in that workbook that you can contemplate on and be in tune in and continue that journey for yourself at your own pace. But I do want to leave you with a couple of practical applications here today as well, just as I have in the past. Using your full voice is a practice. You know, being courageous, it's practice. It's just like building a muscle. You don't go from zero practice to lifting to, or bench pressing to 150 pounds overnight. It takes practice. Ultimately, what happens if you're studying physiology, I don't know what this word never rolls off my tongue smoothly, physiology. If you study that, you also understand that in order to build a muscle, the existing fiber needs to tear. And it's such a fitting example, analogy for anything. In order to build something new, in order to become something new, the next version of who we're meant to be, something needs to give, we need to break through, tear through, and release and let go. And in that case, yeah, those are fears and limiting beliefs and negative self-talk and doubt and shame and guilt and the whole 9 yards, the list goes on and on and on and on if you want. But for today, I really want you to make it a conscious practice and practice expressing yourself in your authentic, powerful, unique voice. Lupita Nyong'o was talking to Trevor Noah in one of the interviews, and I think it was a beautiful interview. I can't remember the details, so I'm just going to paraphrase the summary. But they were talking about accents, and they were talking about, as an actor, it's her job to lean into and learn different accents, not just by the sound, but really techniques, because there's so much more that goes on in the mechanics of how you're moving your mouth and using your larynx and using your breath and the whole. I'm not an expert in that, but I can understand that there is, it's a science, right? But essentially what she was saying was, Something about the identity and the power in being authentic to who you are. And in many cases of immigrants who are living all across the world, as much as we try to assimilate in the culture where we end up being, what makes us unique and so powerful is the accent that we have. It's our own way of communication. And for me, when I heard it, it really touched me deeply, because I went through that many years ago in the States. When I first started my business, that was actually one of my biggest fears. Like, is anybody gonna take me seriously? Because here I am, overeducated, underexperienced woman who is also newly pregnant, trying to build a business and having this thick European accent. What the heck, you know? And on top of it all, what I was building was actually not even tangible. There was no storefront, there was no tangible business there. Everything that I did and have been doing since 2012 has been online. So that was a whole different layer, and it took me quite some time to actually own this and say, you know what, nothing's wrong with my accent. One of the comedians that my husband introduced me to, Victor Borga, from one of the Scandinavian countries, I know one of his skits is actually saying something along the lines of, it's your language, referring to English, it's your language, I'm just trying to use it, right? And also then starting to realize that anybody who speaks with an accent, it means that they know at least another language. So shaming somebody because they have an accent is probably the last thing that should be done by the person who's on the receiving end and doing the shaming. Because oftentimes, as it turns out, they are the ones who are limited in capabilities of speaking anything else but that one language that everybody else is trying to communicate with them in. All that to say, it is a daily commitment and a daily practice to speak in your voice and to use that voice of yours that is beautiful, that is wholesome, that belongs to you and you alone. Second thing I would like you to do, now that you're going to be practicing, one way to practice that is actually start writing, and write yourself letters. Create the safe space on the paper when you can actually pour everything on, because there's no other audience than you, even if you burn that piece of paper at the end. But get into a habit of really expressing things that might be lingering around, like, not so sure if I have the courage to say it. Well, put them on paper. Okay, number one. Number two, record a audio or a video. And that is a very powerful step up level here. It doesn't have to be published publicly, but it will allow you to now speak that power, and you will feel it through the currency of your own voice. Even when your voice is shaking in the beginning, as you're speaking, and you will allow your body to communicate with you, you will notice that depending on the subject, depending on what you're saying and how you're saying it, there are going to be moments when your voice might be shaking a little bit, you might be out of breath a little bit, and then you're going to come to a segment and you're going to feel it, you know, in your stomach, you're going to feel it in your lungs, you're going to feel it, you know, it's a somatic experience, and you feel grounded and you feel powerful and you feel unstoppable, and you're like, oh, this is what it is. And then through practice, you'll be able to cultivate that experience more often and much more intentional. So make this just like a ritual. It's just for you. You don't have to share that recording with anybody. And then the third one, it's for those really ambitious out there. I would challenge you to now, as you're stepping into your power, as you're stepping into the next level of who you are becoming and how you're going to be introducing yourself to the world and what kind of energy will introduce you. do another assessment, do another audit of anything that is written about you. Most often, the first instinct be for many business owners in particular, or public people, look at your bio. The bio itself holds so much potency that's unbelievable. And just read through, what is the story that you're telling about yourself? How are you presenting yourself to the world? And go and rewrite it. Have fun with it. Mine, oh my goodness, I have rewritten so many versions of my own bio throughout the years that it's not even funny. But what I noticed is with every iteration, not only was I able to distill things down to what was really meaningful and what really mattered and what was really relevant, but I was able to take it from like 3 pages down to a couple of paragraphs, because every single time I went through that cycle, the more things I embodied and the less need I felt for them to be written down. It's almost like we were talking earlier, the sky is blue, the grass is green, and this is just a fact about me that doesn't have to be written down anymore. It just, I embody it, I exude it, people just feel it, it's just what it is. So yeah, maybe that's a bio, maybe that's a website, maybe that's an offer. You know, the spectrum of possibilities for you is endless depending on where you are, what you do, and how you present yourself. But that would be definitely on a more daring side, because it feels like it's still a little bit more tangible and a little bit more public. And it's really one of those tipping points between, okay, I'm just doing this for myself, and whew, I'm now presenting this version of me to the public and I'm owning it. All right, so let me know how that feels. I would love to hear your feedback when you go through this. If you have any questions also, please do let me know. If you are on the mailing list to receive the workbook, then you also have direct access to my email, so you can reach out through that as well. I read all the questions and I really want to make sure that I can support you fully. I also want to take a couple of moments now to introduce you to other ways, the next steps. If this is something that you feel like has been a great warm-up, if you have explored thus far the experience and like, oh, this is just a taste test and I'm ready for more and I want to dive deeper, I want to share with you what is possible so that you can make that informed decision. I'm not here to push, I'm not here to pull, I'm not here to convince, I'm not here to sell anything, but what I will do is I will give you options, and then you can choose for yourself, or you can again reach out and we can figure out which is the right fit for you based on where you are and where you want to be, and we'll do this together so you don't have to do it on your own, okay? All right, so the first thing that I want to make sure and really clear, in case it hasn't been cleared yet, is individuals that I have the most success with and I enjoy working with the most are high achievers who are also deeply intuitive, who are also visionary creatives, and who are also strategic. So it's an interesting blend, a rare blend actually. So that in itself, it feels sometimes like seeking a unicorn, but I do know that there's a lot of those unicorns out there, and that in turn, those unicorns are also seeking the unicorn mentor for them who gets all of those multidimensional aspects of who they are and how to operate at that level. Navigating multiple roles, transitions, timelines, quietly holding that most people even know what to do with. That's just natural state of who we are, right? It's not easy to be you. So you need to have a mentor by your side who gets that aspect as well. AKA that translates into we don't do small talks. You're not interested in rah, 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 loudness. You're the quiet, persistent person who not only moves mountains, but mountains move when you are in your right energy. You also feel and value the truth, and you can see through smoke and mirrors, and you can see through manipulative tactics, and you really are in a space where you value legacy over performance, and you value rhythm over rushing things. You also know that there's no such thing as perfection, even though you and I were both trained for excellence, and we have sacrificed great parts of ourselves at the altar of pursuing excellence. But the season you're entering in your life, you are beginning to value presence, and presence of all of you, and in many different areas of life. You are probably branching out beyond the myopic vision, singular focus, into the beauty of all that life has to offer. And it can be a little scary. So what that means that you're most likely in the season of recalibrating your identity, your voice, also the way you feel the need to work, what has worked for you and how you were showing up and how you were serving in the work you did. It was incredible. It got you to where you are, but now you're ready for a change, maybe something different entirely. You're looking for a business model that not only delivers the numbers, but also delivers the lifestyle and supports the lifestyle that you crave right now and the values that you are stacking and building upon, which means also your priorities might be shifting. So it's a wholesome package and complex dynamic that we're going to be addressing there. You're also the person who loves freedom, but also starts to understand that you still need structure in order to be free within that structure. And I have a lot of clients who would come to me in a very rebellious stage and like, I hate structure, I am anti-structure, and structure doesn't work for me, and if there is any, I intentionally tear it down and I run away. Only to realize that, hey, that's actually a story, that's actually a response, sometimes trauma related. Although speaking of trauma, I'm not a therapist and I am not trauma-informed therapist, but I recognize it, and I will make sure that we have the conversation and I can refer you to the right sources if the need arises. Okay, just wanted to make that clear. But speaking of that, you know, as a response to that, it's this rebel who is like, the structure is not for me, and then we present it in a way that actually resonates for those unicorns. Like, oh, actually, you know what? I'm a maverick and I do need that structure so that I can maverick within that structure and be free within that. I know it kind of feels like oxymoron, but believe me, it is not, and it creates miraculous change in those clients' lives night and day. Speaking of night and day, as I said earlier, you know, when we're talking about blueprints like we talked about yesterday, I'm not interested in some 3-step formula that supposedly been time tested and worked thousands of times, because let's be honest, you and I probably, when you try those formulas, they didn't work, myself included. Of all the things, let me tell you, this is a funny one. Of all the things, I committed myself to really prioritize my health after trying a ton of diets, working with nutritionists, working with personal trainers, the whole 9 yards, to the point when the only thing that I could have in the fridge, the only thing left in the fridge from the items that I could have was the light itself, nothing else. So you can imagine to the extremes that I went to reclaim my health, aka my physical appearance, getting that back into where I think it needs to be and where I feel at my optimum. So, long story short, I went to the length of actually finding the right medical fit and going with the Ozempic, which has been dubbed as the miracle medicine around the world. You know what happened? I gained weight. It's so much about the tried and true and tested things. I am here living truth, an example that there are exceptions to every rule, and chances are that you and I are that exceptions. Therefore, there's no formulas to squeeze you into. And the blueprints, you're a special breed there, so we need to approach them in a different way. And speaking of blueprints, if you are beginning of your entrepreneurial journey and you are seeking the, I just need 6-figure income in the next 30 days, this is not for you. And if you seek fully automation, super sensational and incredible email campaigns and funnels and all the latest and greatest, this is not for you, really. Chances are you're not. For me, if you're also selling low ticket, highly leveraged, meaning passive income things, probably not the right fit unless we're here for personal development and not the business building. Then we might have some wiggle room and we can have that conversation, okay? But what I do want to present you with, if you're still with me at this point, because there was quite a list of criteria, I want to introduce you to and invite you to consider a season pass. What is a season pass? There's going to be 2 things that I'll present to you, and season pass is number 1. Season pass is actually the most comprehensive living, breathing ecosystem that is designed around your rhythm, that is designed around your priorities, and it's designed around your evolution, which means that we walk together through all of your layers of life. And we're not just thinking about strategies, we're not just thinking about creativity, but we're really seeking alignment, and everything that we do is adapted to you. What does that mean in plain terms, in terms of actual features? Well, the season pass, it's called season pass because my work and my energetic blueprint and flow comes in seasons as well. And so what I want to offer to a handful, there's only 5 spaces top available at this white glove level service, is that we make available to you 9, 12, or 18-month options. And they include, it's like all inclusive, whatever you can imagine and whatever you need, whether it's scheduled sessions, SOS, speed dial access, VIP immersions, as needed access, asynchronous support, meaning Voxer, email, messenger, whatever we determine that will work, and it will how you need to be supported. And then also, if you are in the container that spans over a year or 18 months, you also get to come over here to Europe, whether to Slovenia or any other European place of your choosing, for a magical retreat. And in that retreat, this is a whole next level experience, and it is not it's not a getaway to forget everything, which retreat technically translates to, but it's a space that we co-create to think clearly about personal, professional, energetic, done for you aspects. And I'm going to talk about it in just a little bit, just in itself, retreat. So that is all covered under season pass. It is the highest level of service that I offer at the moment. As I mentioned, available only to 5 individuals. And if this is something that tickles you, and if this is something that you feel like, oh my gosh, I want to step into this space, then let's have a conversation and see what that gets to look like for you. and we'll customize not just the length, but also the rhythm within which we'll be collaborating, co-creating this sacredness. And yeah, you can send me a DM, you can check more information online and reach me there. However, whatever works for you. Like I said, this is a high-level support, and I also want to make sure that we start at the right note, which means not sending you through a ton of electronic hoops and treating you like a number, but a real human being. So let's have a real conversation. And then, as I briefly mentioned already, the second opportunity is a momentum code retreat. That has been first envisioned, I want to say, in 2019, and it just came through as this clear vision. It was one of the rare occasions when the whole painting was right there, not just a shooting star glimpse into something. And I actually created a whole shebang, and I started actually the campaign to reach out, invite people, started to have conversations. Everything was already set up, and then the world shut down. I was like, oh, okay, I guess it's not meant to be. And it was truly not meant to be. It wasn't ready at the time because I wasn't ready to step into it. So I needed some additional growth and evolution, and among other things, I needed to be fully present on this side of the pond in order to really embody the energy that the momentum code retreat is encoded by, and it offers, and it holds you in the wholesome container. So now that I am here on this side of the pond, especially in my soul-stirring European hometown, a 1,000-year town with, you know, one of those with a castle on top of a hill, red clay rooftops, and alpine backdrop. Yep, that's what we're talking about. This is the magic waiting to happen. And what the retreat ultimately is, the way I envisioned it and what I wanted to invite you into, is an immersion and identity activation at the deepest levels. And it's really intended for those who are in this transition and you are looking to have support on multiple levels. Those levels can include mindset work, they can include narrative shifts, meaning rewriting your story, who you are, why you are, how you are, what do you do, how you do it, in order to position you for what's coming next. And that could mean playing strategies for your business. That can mean redoing, upgrading your service suite. That can mean redefining your model, and not just business model, but the model, the dynamics that hold you and your family, right? It can mean priority mapping. It can mean also, for some of you, putting everything on paper in a framework of a memoir, so that you can launch yourself into the next level with that tangible aspect that is not just going to introduce you to the world, but it's also going to create incredible amount of clarity for you, and it's going to create the capacity that you will need to call in, receive, navigate, and hold with joy and excitement all the things that are yet to come to you, that are out there, available, awaiting for you to become a match for them. So all of that is what the retreat has been designed for, to hold, to co-create for you, with you. And then after we spend 3 days together, which actually means you're going to be here for 5 days, so you also have time to really set in and then integrate, all inclusive, all paid. You're also going to have a 30-day additional support for that integration and execution process. Because what I have found out through my own experiences is when you're in an event like this, Whether you're by yourself or a small group or massive audiences, the energy that is possible and who you are in that short period of time is vastly different than when you come back to your own reality and the old rhythm, when now you have to navigate both commitments, priorities, needs of others, dynamics in your home, in the office, the whole 9 yards, and also maneuver the timeline of your own becoming that is zigzagging in and out, and be both at the same time, hold them both, process them both, make them both happen. Oftentimes, unfortunately, without the proper support, what happens is that, oh, okay, great, that event right there was just a great memory, but here I am sucked back in reality, and days turn into weeks, weeks turn into months, months turn into years, and there you are 5 years later, still in the grind, hustling and bustling. You're like, one day when? Yeah, no, we're not doing that one day when. If this is what you're feeling called towards, I actually do have openings coming up at the end of June and the beginning of July. There are 3 spaces available. So let me know. Let's get you on a calendar. Let's book you flight tickets. The hotel is already awaiting with the overview of this entire town. And it's gonna be magic, that I do know already. So this is for today. This invitation concludes today's session, talking about voice alchemy. Let me know what comes up for you. Let me know when you need support, and let me know what the next steps are that are congruent, that feel congruent for you. And also what I want you to know, what I want you to understand is that first and foremost, this is not your first rodeo, so you have done this before, so this is probably not something I need to specifically say, but I'm gonna say it anyway. Oftentimes, when something scares us just a little bit, it's probably a good sign, and if it feels a little stretch and just beyond of your comfort zone, this is probably a good sign, so honor that as well. Otherwise, I am here for you, to support you, to answer any questions that you have, and to put you down on a calendar if we are the right fit and we figure out what is going to be the right next step for you that's going to work for the both of us. So I am excited to have this conversation with you, and I look forward to seeing you tomorrow. Take care.